Why is he not texting me back? I text him every day. Did I do something wrong on our first date? I had to ask her, how many times did you text her? I text him, and she said, well, just a couple times a day. And I tried following him to the gym and seeing if he was there. And I just imagined him pulling into the parking lot and seeing her car there, and halting, screech, and deciding to get out of there as fast as he can. So I asked her, how has this been affecting you? And she said, it's been terrible. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I can't focus. And this was affecting her health in general. And so there's a intersection between our mind, our body, and our relationships. And all these things have an effect on each other. And all of us, both men and women, have vulnerabilities, and we're all prone to insecurities, and they can affect our physical and mental and relationship health. It's my goal for this lesson, this series, to look at how we can develop ourselves as whole people, mind, body, and spirit. So I'm Dr. Thomas Luttrell. I'm an assistant professor of Washington Adventist University. And this series is Higher Change, Psychology for a Whole Life. And today we're talking about why you should care about your mind. The objective for today is to look at the intersections between mind, body, and spirit, to differentiate between health, wholeness, and wellness, and what are the different things, and to look at how does our key therapeutic lifestyle choices affect our health, and what are some things you can do. So we're outside in Frederick, Maryland, in the sunshine. It's a bit warm today, but I can tell you that it's with the people around and nature. It's definitely calming. Sometimes we have music and noise in the background, but in general, when you're in nature, it's very calming and you feel a lot more relaxed and you feel revived. And so you can see, I can feel this connection between our body and our mental health. But also relationships can also play a key role. A lot of people don't pay attention to how relationships can play a role. So we're going to look at some of these therapeutic lifestyle changes, and I'm going to go through some of our presentation. You can follow along in a guided notebook that is available to you. And in this guided notebook, we have a fill in the blank section. You can just write into blanks, answers to follow along as we talk. That'll help you to stay focused and to learn what are the key principles to take out of this. So the first thing we're going to talk about, how does our relationships affect our health? As I said, many people don't want to look at relationships. They want to just look at their physical health, but relationships can play a key role. So number one, as we'll see, relationships are critical for our health and our longevity. Number two, relationships help us to be resilient and cope with stress and distress. Relationships also give us a motivation to take care of ourselves. And the next question is, how does psychological and physical health affect our relationships and our dating lives? You might care about how you meet other people. Our health has a reciprocal effect on our relationships. Poor physical and mental health can be detrimental to dating and intimate relationships. So why is that? In what way do you think that they would be related? First of all, our mental and physical health can determine how others find us attractive or not. Poor physical health or hygiene, how people care for themselves, particularly through cleanliness, is often a common deal breaker in finding a partner. And once you know that our mental health drives us to want to take care of ourselves. So overall, our health in general would affect our relationships. And the next point is that poor mental health also is a turnoff. And some of the qualities, if you think about all the qualities that people are turned off by, most of them, if not all of them, are related to our mental health. For example, just some examples I thought of: emotional neediness, being over controlling or domineering, emotional reactivity, if someone's too emotional, or maybe someone has no confidence, low self-confidence, maybe they're narcissistic or very self-absorbed. Narcissism is a turnoff to people. People who are depressed, people you might think of as a Debbie Downer, is what people are often uh, refer to people who are always negative and depressed. Uh, that can be kind of turn off if they're always negative and down all the time. People like to be around people who are generally happy and positive. Anxious people can also be turned off. I remember when I was a worrywart, hanging out with people, people called me a worrywart. And because generally we want to be around people who are positive and happy, and anxious people can just sound, it's not a really positive feeling to be around. People are jealous. That's obviously a turn off and is a sign of insecurity and contempt. John Gottman writes about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which is about relationships and how relationships fall apart. And some of these things like contempt are all related to the status of our mind, our mental health, what's going on in our mind. Let's talk about the difference between health, wellness, and wholeness. First of all, what's the difference between health and wellness? World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. I like that definition of health. Health is considered an outcome. A lot of people unfortunately think of health related to disease. But if you really and in fact most of our healthcare industry is built on a disease mindset, or the idea of we're just focusing on getting rid of diseases. But real health is just much more than the absence of disease. It is an outcome. That's the desired outcome. And wellness is the process of how one becomes healthy, or the way to achieve good health. The focus is of wellness tends to be on prevention and the choices we make. So, and so we're obviously interested in health and wellness. Health is the outcome, and wellness is that state, the process of becoming healthy. And mental health, unfortunately, many people don't realize that mental health is intricately part of this. In fact, many schools, I have to say, don't even include mental health in their departments of health and wellness. Ironic. Uh, so, we have to think about how do we incorporate mental health as part of our health and wellness. This is very important. You'd think that it's obvious, but it's not so obvious to a lot of people. What is wholeness? How is that different from the others? Wholeness is a state of being complete or harmonious whole. In other words, all parts of the self are in good health. You might think of it as all of our cells are in balance. And it's interesting because Carl Jung defined it merely as an internal harmony between one's unconscious and conscious mind. But this leaves out the physical body. So there's some people have this idea of wholeness related to the mind, but we like to think of wholeness as the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. And that's what really a holistic or a whole person approach to health does. It looks at the whole person, mind, body, and spirit, and how all of these are interconnected. That leads us to the next point. A holistic approach to health, or whole person healthcare, treats the entire person as an integrated unit or whole. So let's talk about therapeutic lifestyle changes. How do our lifestyle choices contribute to our health and our mental health specifically? In fact, Roger Walsh wrote in a 2011 article summarizing important lifestyle factors that contribute to positive mental health. And this article is called Lifestyle and Mental Health. And this is published, you can find this on the APA website. It's in the journal American Psychologist. And according to, I actually recommend that everyone who's watching this take a minute to go to that link and read this article. From my students, there is usually I quiz students on this, and that's because I really want people to really understand it. Now I will cover the basics in this presentation, but I just want to give people an opportunity to go directly to this source. This is where I'm getting my information from, Roger Walsh's article, and you can find it yourself too. And there's a link here. It's at the APA website uh, as part of the Journal American Psychologist. Now I'm going to review some of the information. According to Roger Walsh, um, lifestyle interventions can be as effective as either medication or psychotherapy. Now, that's not to say that we're recommending that you don't take medication or you don't take psychotherapy, but oftentimes people don't think about what are some of the conscious choices they can make that would contribute proactively to their mental health. How can they uh, take a preventative approach and actually to mental illness at least, and promote positive mental health through some of their choices in their lives. Obviously, this medication and psychotherapy can also be very effective, but even before you get to the needing that point, you can promote a positive mental health through some of the choices we make. So the thesis of his article is that health professionals have significantly underestimated the importance of lifestyle factors for mental health. And unfortunately, many professionals in the field don't even talk about lifestyle choices. And that's why I really believe in talking about it as part of a whole person approach to psychology and mental. That's why this series is called Higher Change, a whole person approach to psychology. TLC, he uses the acronym TLC. That stands for Therapeutic Lifestyle Changes. And so there's many benefits to therapeutic lifestyle changes. And the benefits include that they're cost effective, they can be used as an adjunctive treatment, they are free of social stigma. That means that you can do these things and it's not going to look embarrassing. Unfortunately, there is a lot of stigma associated with therapy and medication, unfortunately. And I don't think that there should be a social stigma. But if you're going to worry about social stigma, then you can at least consider lifestyle choices that don't have any social stigma. There's no stigma associated with exercise and diet, which we're going to look at. And they have less side effects and complications compared to medications. Again, this is not to one of the benefits do not include necessarily replacing medication. In fact, there's many times when you need medication, and that's the only choice people have. There's many mental health or mental illnesses that can only be treated with medication that we know of. So this is not to say that we replace medication, but therapeutic lifestyle changes can supplement that, can be an adjunctive treatment, and they have less side effects and complications than medication. But again, this is not to say that this replaces that. And I also want to say, just a reminder too, that I'm not a medical doctor. I am a therapist. So I'm just sharing with you the research that Roger Walsh is sharing. So, of course, you should always consult with your doctor before you change any medications. This is just a reminder. And I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't make any recommendations as far as that. So just remember, before you make any changes to your medications or anything like that, consult with your doctor. I'm just sharing with you the research on the benefits of lifestyle choices. Okay. I hope that makes sense. And again, therapeutic lifestyle changes can improve our overall health, and it can also improve our self esteem and our overall quality of life. Especially when you start feeling good and you're not as dependent on other sources of treatment. Not that we can guarantee that, but if you are able to have a better health, that's great. You can have a better quality of life. Healthy lifestyle factors that Walsh discusses includes some of the following. These are common factors that are considered for overall health, but they specifically also contribute to our mental health. So the first one is exercise. exercise contributes to mental health. And we'll talk about these more in detail. Second one is nutrition or diet. And this involves two specific components. That is food selection, the types of food that we choose contributes to our mental health. And there's also a need for supplements. Supplements can, of course, with the consultation with your doctor, supplements can be a valuable benefit or have some benefits for your mental health. Of course, again, you should always consult with a doctor or a registered dietitian before you make any changes to your diet that could potentially affect your health. Another thing that has been very helpful in people's mental health is getting out in nature. And so essentially, that would be immersion in nature rather than immersion in media. Unfortunately, much of the population in the world today is much more immersed in media like television or social network, social media, instead of being out in nature. And that has detrimental impact on our mental health. In fact, I saw an article recently on someone described the trauma of being separated from nature. You know, our bodies need to be around nature, and when you're in an urban environment and artificial environments, surrounded by media, and you're not in touch with nature, that can have it can cause a lot of stress on the body that you may not realize. The next point, um, interpersonal relationships. Relationships have a major impact on our mental health. In fact, I would say that relationships are the number one factor for overall mental health. It's the driver for our mental health. Relationships, relationship health is the driver for our mental health, which is the driver for overall physical health. And that's the way I look at it. So relationships are very important. The next thing is rest and recreational activities. We'll talk about a few ideas, but rest, you need to be able to get sleep at night. You need to be able to wind down, get some of the stress out of your system, because too much stress can also be um, have an impact on your mental health. We're going to talk about that more in detail as well in the future. Also, relaxation and stress management techniques. These include coping, self management techniques like practices like prayer, meditation, yoga, um, yeah, other things we can think of. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but there are other self management techniques like deep breathing, deep relaxation, whatever you can think. Getting a massage, anything that can help you physically calm down and rest and relax. Another thing that people may not realize that also plays a big role in our mental health is religion and spiritual involvement. In fact, religion has been linked to numerous health outcomes, from people paying attention to their diet, um, not abusing substances, not engaging in high risk behavior, um, being monogamous, so they're less likely to contract sexually transmitted infections. Not that it's a guarantee, of course, but they're usually more less likely because of their religious practices. There's lots of positive benefits of being involved in religion or spirituality. It gives people positive coping mechanisms. And we're going to talk about that more. And then the last thing is service to others. Let's talk about these a little more in detail, okay? So, what are some of the specific benefits of these lifestyle choices? Let's look at them more in detail. When it comes to exercise, exercise has several benefits for our mental health. First of all, it helps reduce our risks for depression and anxiety, reduces risk of neurodegenerative disorders by about 45%. And while women may gain more than men in benefits, um, everyone seems to benefit, including both clinical and non clinical populations. Again, this is all according to Roger Welch's summary of the research.
Both aerobic exercise and weight training are effective in reducing depression. That's also an important point. So you can do one or the other, but either way, it will have some benefits. How does it work? In what way does exercise help um, help our? So there's several proposed links between exercise and our health outcomes. The first idea is that it boosts serotonin activity, which is a neurotransmitter or hormone in the brain that is involved in our mood. And so it helps us to feel good. It improves our sleep. And because if you've been exercising, you're more likely to get a good night's sleep. And good sleep is also linked to our mental health. People who don't get good sleep tend to have more mental health problems. So getting good sleep at night is very important. And then exercise releases endorphins, which is also a hormone secreted by the brain that helps relieve pain. So exercise helps people to endure pain uh, or any kinds of pain better, where those who don't more prone to uh, be sensitive to pain. Exercise also helps to interrupt negative thoughts. So it's hard to think negatively when you're exercising. If you think about it, I mean, really, exercise requires a lot of motivation as it is, you know. So if you are thinking negatively, you're probably not going to be exercising. So the act of exercise actually forces you to change your mindset. You have to be somewhat positive sometimes. Although sometimes people who are stewing and angry about something, they might find that exercise helps them to, break out of that and let off some steam, in a sense, so to speak. And so, in some ways, it does help. Yeah, I mean that in itself also can help break people's thought processes. And the last thing is that it disrupts. Well, second to last thing, it disrupts our mentally induced tension or muscular armor. So if you've been carrying a lot of burdens on your shoulder and you're clenched up and you're tensed, exercise and especially like stretching can help you physically release some of those tensions that are stored in your body. And the last thing is that exercise increases our brain size and cognitive functioning because if you think about it, exercise requires a lot of muscle coordination. It's stimulating the body. People who are, for example, involved in training, disciplining their bodies for sports or dancing or anything that involves body coordination. It actually increases your brain capacity because your brain is thinking. It's training your brain, and so it has to do some more functioning for that. Now, so let's talk about nutrition. How nutrition is also important for mental health. Research indicates that the best diet for your mental health, or the healthiest for your mental health, is a diet that involves a rainbow of colors. That means it involves fruits and vegetables from a variety of colors. So you want a variety of things. If you find that your plate is all brown, which oftentimes people will eat a lot of potatoes and meat or carbs, they might find that their food or their pasta, for example, their food is all brown. And I love yummy food too, don't get me wrong. But if you really want to have a good, healthy diet, you need to have vegetables and fruits that have blues and greens and reds and oranges in there because you're more likely to get a lot of nutrients in there. And that's a shorthand way of thinking about how you need to get a variety of nutrients. So it's just a meta. Now, one of the key things that you need, especially for mental health, is omega 3 fatty acids. And now I'm a vegetarian, so that's one of the things that I have to be very careful about because it's only found in primarily in deep seawater fish. So if you don't eat fish, you have to make sure you find another source to get omega 3 fatty acids. Now, fish, one of the advantages for people who don't eat fish is that you have to be careful about fish being prone to mercury. So, omega 3 can also be found in microalgae sources, basically plant based, but that's a supplement basically that you would have to find. Otherwise, people who eat fish tend to live longer, but in Mediterranean diets, as long as they don't get that mercury, I guess. But they tend to have it tends to be good for you, but it especially is helpful for your mental health. So, unfortunately, the typical diet does not get enough omega 3, and omega 3 is implicated in our mental health. Omega 3 should contain both EPA and DHA, which are essential for our mental health. And it has been shown to reduce mood disorders such as depression, inflammation, and it reduces symptoms and delays the onset of schizophrenia. Now, that's not to say it's a cure, okay, just to be clear, but it can help reducing the symptoms and delay onsets. Now, there's other things that I've heard that are also implicated, potentially implicated in schizophrenia, but honestly, we really don't know yet exactly what is the etiology and what's cure. Otherwise, we would have a cure for it. But there's some things we can do. And the last thing that we can talk about related to nutrition and our mental health is calories. We have to reduce our excessive calories because obesity is also linked to a variety of mental health issues. And yeah, so obesity can reduce cognitive functioning um, and can also cause other problems. Now, there's other things that are also related to mental health, which we're going to look at. There's eating disorders. That's a lack of adequate nutrition. I mean, this can cause a lack of adequate nutrition if you're not getting enough um, food, like if you're anorexic or bulimic. And obesity technically is an eating disorder too, but I'm just thinking about for those who are restrictive. If you're not getting enough calories, that's also potential danger because you can't operate, your brain can't operate without food. It can't operate without calories. And so either if you can get too little or too much calories for your brain's functioning. Talk about sunshine and how does sunshine affect our mental health? So sunshine, it helps us specifically through the production of vitamin D. Vitamin D is a multi-purpose hormone with neural functions, which can be obtained through exposure to sunshine or supplements. So, like for me, I can be out in the sun all day, but I just won't get enough vitamin D. I'm chronically uh, deficient. Not I shouldn't say insufficient, or it's not deficient, but I'm slightly on the insufficient side. So what I have to do is I have to take vitamin D supplements. Many people, in fact, most people get insufficient amounts of vitamin D. And unfortunately, a lack of vitamin D has been linked to depression, cognitive impairments, and schizophrenia. So that's why for myself, I take vitamin D supplements. So what I would do before you start anything, you may want to just talk to your doctor. Like you can get a blood test and find out how your vitamin D levels are, and you can discover whether or not you have an adequate amount. Many people, like I said, do not get enough. So that's why for those people, they may want to take vitamin D supplements. But again, you want to consult with a doctor. I'm not your doctor, so I can't tell you. Many people, most people, in fact, spend much of their lives in artificial environments and dim light away from nature. And this can result in a disruption of sleep. It can impair your attention span and it can reduce academic performance. When I'm in school or when I was in school as a student or working now as a professor, I have to spend a lot of time on the computer. And that sometimes all that focusing on writing and computer work and looking at a screen can actually sometimes cause my brain to get stuck. I just can't. I'll have a mental block and can't get past it for whatever reason. I can't focus or I get distracted easily by Facebook or social media. And during those times, I find that I just need to get out and go for a walk, especially right before sundown. I'd love to get out and go for a walk. I go for a walk with my wife and now with my son. And just taking that break and getting outside can make a big difference in my ability to focus. Because then I can come back and I can hit those books hard and be much more focused. And so you may discover that if you have difficulty with studying or whatever, that um, just sometimes taking a break and getting outside in nature can be very helpful. Also, if you're always looking at screens and artificial light, it can also make it hard to sleep at night because your body is looking for this natural um, rhythm of day and night. And so looking at screens all the time makes it hard for the brain to discern what time of day it is. Okay, too much media immersion can so being involved, looking like I said, looking at screens, being in watching television or going on the internet all the time can cause problems. It can create attention deficits. It can and all these for our mental health, so it can cause you to adopt negative messages from the media. uh, if you're always surrounded by um, media, your perception of the world can start to change. uh, and the media is not always friendly to people. The media sends messages about what is the ideal standard of beauty, and it's not very realistic. It tells us how we ought to behave, and it's not always good to men and women. Tends to promote stereotypes, and so that's not good. Media immersion is often implicated in addiction. People who are addicted to television, entertainment, and movies. Um, people they tend to be more impulsive because they're driven by the constant flow of images in the media. And that also is linked to this sense of hyperreality. Hyperreality is this virtual world we live in. We're not grounded in reality. And that can also, if you're constantly in media, it makes you start to multitask. There's some people who talked about how even people who are watching TV are on the internet at the same time. And so people are multitasking all the time. They're not being able to give their complete undivided attention to something. In fact, as you are listening to me, you might discover that you are also multitasking or paying attention to something else. So how many of us are able to actually focus and pay attention to one thing without the constant need for distraction? And lastly, too much immersion in media can result in a burnout cognitively. We'll have less brain energy to give to our attention. A research study was conducted of a hospital that had rooms which offered views of natural settings. Now, do you think that this could make a difference to people's health and the recovery times? Their patient rooms, and I don't know where this picture is from, but you can get the idea that that's their mindset. They're trying to help the window of nature so they can have better. And that again, that's all part of this approach, this holistic approach, whole person health. Okay, so the next major point in health, mental health, is the role of relationships. Research has shown that good relationships can reduce health risks from colds to strokes, can enhance the quality of life and enhance happiness, and enhances our cognitive capacity and wisdom. As I was saying before, when people have good relationships, it gives them the motivation to want to take care of their health. They're more resilient. They are more likely to bounce through getting sick because, in general, they just feel good about life. When you're depressed, in fact, we know people who are depressed are more susceptible to colds and things like that. So relationships can be the antidote. Unfortunately, Americans are spending less time with family and friends than previous generations. They are less involved in civic groups in their communities, and they're a lot more socially isolated today than they have ever been. And that's not to blame it on social media. It's just in general, the whole trend is that we are staying in more. And if you were to ask yourself, how many of us know our neighbors, for example? Do you know the people that live next door to you? What are their names? I remember before I lived in a neighborhood where I didn't know my neighbors for 7 years after I moved in there. And that's pretty sad. I finally broke out of that, and now I know all my neighbors, and I moved, and I try to make a more intentional effort about that. But do you know the people around you? Many of us don't have the social connections, and we know that people who are socially connected have more support and they have better coping mechanisms when they have stress. And so if you're sick or well, when you know that people care about you, you're more likely to bounce through. And so having good relationships with your family and your friends is also important. Mental health, uh, these are also important to your mental health. If you're socially isolated, it's going to have detrimental effects on your mental. So recreation can also play an important role in our mental health as well as our physical health. Healthy recreational activities include spending time in nature and exercising, as we've been talking about. But just playing and playfulness, just having a good time, can be very important for our mental health. Having a sense of humor. There's a saying, laughter is the best medicine. That is also important for our mental health. And being able to enjoy the arts and aesthetic pleasures, that's because you have to be able to see beauty. And people who are mentally unwell cannot see the beauty around them. So being able to appreciate the arts and the beauty and the beauty around us, like in the flowers or in the landscapes or the arts that we see, can be an antidote to that. We're going to discuss more of these in the future, but some other things include relaxation and self management techniques like prayer and meditation, involvement in religion or spirituality, and lastly, service to others. We have a chapter on spirituality and mental health where we're going to talk more about these specifically. So, what are some other factors you can think of that are not included in that list? I'd like you to just take a minute and think about that. What are some factors that I haven't mentioned? I know that there's a few that we can probably think of. Um, what are some that you can think of that are not discussed by Roger Walsh? Because Roger Walsh, he had a good comprehensive list, but there's others that others have thought about. So a few others that on my own. And so you can write your own, think about your own that you can come up with that would contribute to positive mental health. But some that I came up with would be like not abusing drugs or alcohol. Now that would come under nutrition, but some people forget about that. Another thing that would be related to rest and relaxation is our sleep hygiene. So obviously, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not getting enough rest. So there's definitely a relationship there. But sleep hygiene is about our quality of sleep and how we get that sleep. Making sure you get enough, that you darken your room, that your room is comfortable, and that you don't have like interruption of your sleep because of sleep apnea or something like that. Uh, Not having stimulants in your blood that could keep you up. All these things could affect your mental health. Because if you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to have poor mental health. Related to service is community involvement, but you don't necessarily have to think of it as service per se. It is service, but being involved in your community is another way of getting that social network or social support and just being around people. Limiting the use of media, as I mentioned before, and television is also important. I think that was already mentioned, so that's kind of redundant. Mental rest is also important. What does that mean? Essentially, stopping this rumination. Rumination is where your brain is constantly thinking about things. And obsessing or repeatedly thinking about thoughts or problems without any resolution, that can be adding a stress to your body. And so you have to be able to calm your mind and have a rest, give your brain a rest sometimes. If you're overtaxing your brain all the time, you're going to be overly stressed. You're not going to have much energy. And then the last thing I would add is freedom from negative emotions like anger or shame. I don't think that was mentioned in the article, but I could be wrong. But anger and shame, negative emotions like that can also be detrimental to our health. So we want to think about how do we relieve ourselves from some of these emotions. And that's where therapy can also be very helpful. Now, why do you think there's something else to think about that we might discuss is why are people slow to adopt TLCs or these changes in their lives? Something to think about. There's big challenges. People, we know these things, but they don't do them. And why? We know what we ought to.
So, in conclusion, if we want to be effective in our relationships, then we also need to take care of our mental health. And if we want to have good physical health, then we also should consider our mental and relationship health. All these things are important. And there are key lifestyle choices that we can do to help contribute to each of these things. If we want to be an effective leader or parent, then we have to take care of our bodies and get enough sleep so that we're not irritable during the day. If we want to be an attractive partner, then we also especially need to take care of our mental health. And we oftentimes think about our physical health, but our mental health is also important because it makes a difference in whether we're going to be an attractive person or not. So if you want to think about how you're going to be successful in life and be happy, it's really key to have a balance between mind, body, and spirit. Now, I want to just talk about spiritual perspectives. A lot of times we don't talk about spirituality as part of our wholeness, but spirituality also plays a role in mental health and is very, very important to our overall health. Most people who identify with a religion or are interested in religion and spirituality and how they intersect know that religion can offer solutions and to help people with mental health. Specifically, I come from a Christian perspective, and I know that Christian teachings have a lot of guidance and advice on how we can improve our overall mental health. So we can take care of our mind, body, and spirit because we have spiritual principles that can also encourage us that way. As a Christian, I believe that I have a special purpose and reason to take care of myself because I believe that Christ died for my body and died for me. And so because of that, I want to take care of myself. In fact, the Apostle Paul writes in 1 Corinthians, he says, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies." Now, he was talking about sexual immorality, but this principle can be applied to our whole health. Because God died for us, he loves us, we ought to take care of ourselves. He values us, therefore we value ourselves. And it just reminds me of a passage that Ellen White wrote in her book, Mind, Character, and Personality. It's a compilation, but one of the things she wrote is very similar to that. She says, God has given to every human being a brain, and he desires that it shall be used to his glory. We have none too much brain power or reasoning faculties. We are to educate and train every power of mind and body, the human mechanism that Christ bought for us, in order that we may put it to the best possible use. So I just want to think, we want to take care of ourselves because someone else saw the value in us, and therefore we ought to value ourselves. And because of that, we take care of our whole mind, body, and spirit. So I thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you next time as we talk further about these things in our series on higher change, psychology for our whole health. Have a good day.